This is the Buried in Work podcast, where we share tips and interview experts to help you simplify estate planning and end-of-life tasks.
Welcome to the Buried in Work podcast. Today, we have the pleasure of hosting Gregory Kurinec, the founder of Pennant Planning. He's a dedicated financial consultant and thought leader in the field of retirement planning and estate planning. Since 2006, Greg has been helping people at or near their retirement with investment advising, estate planning, risk management, and overall financial well-being. He's a CFP, which is a certified financial planner and a graduate of Purdue University's College of Consumer and Family Sciences. He's also the founder of Gene's Journey for Hope, a foundation supporting families affected by cancer. If you know, the background story behind Buried in Work is very personal to us as well. Today, Greg will share his insights on financial planning as it relates to succession and end-of-life tasks. Welcome, Greg.
Thank you, Adam. Thanks for having me today.
Yeah, great that you're here. Let's start and just dive in. Can you share a little bit about your journey into financial consulting and what inspired you to focus on retirement planning and financial literacy?
Yeah, I always knew I wanted to be involved in finance in some way. I liked money, was always driven by money, even as a young kid, trying to odd jobs, just trying to make money at all times. So growing up in the Chicagoland area, I had a lot of exposure to people who had parents that worked down on the Chicago Board of Trade. And I was like, oh, that's a cool job. That sounds like something that's really interesting and I really wanted to get into. Well, with my age, being a early millennial, so to speak, that the Board of Trade and open air trading was kind of going away very quickly with the advent of online brokerage and things like that. So I knew that probably wasn't going to be my path, but I've always been very social, able to easily connect with people. So that's what kind of drew me into financial planning. Now, when you're 22 years old and coming out of college and, you don't have any of the gray hair and you have a lot more hair, people aren't so willing to trust you with their $1 million portfolios at the time. So, trying to connect with who would I can best serve, who I can best relate to. Well, 22-year-olds, my peers, don't have many financial planning needs, at least not enough to support me starting a new business. So I connected with people that were my parents' age. Getting closer to retirement, having more questions, or kids are coming out of college and having more needs. And that's who I connected with early on. And that's kind of how I started to serve this market. And it's really the only market I've ever served.
So how is that market different? What are some of the questions that people that are nearing retirement or have entered retirement face that people that are mid-career don't have to necessarily think about?
Well, it's a mindset. When you're mid-career or early career, all you're worried about is keeping the family afloat, like making sure that we can do all the things that we want as a family, whatever your goals are, sending kids to college and paying for it, buying the home, all those things to try and keep the family afloat until you have this watershed moment one day, like, oh, how long do I want to do this for? How much longer do I want to continue to work? And that's changed so much in the last 30 or 40 years. Prior to that, most people received a pension of some sort. So their retirement planning was built in. Well, when ERISA came into place and companies started abandoning pensions as a whole, and the onus is now put on the employee to save for retirement, everybody thought it was great. Oh, I get to control my money. I get to decide how to invest it and what to do with it and things like that, until we realized we're not very good as human beings at doing that. We spend the money that we get. We don't save it. Now, that's not everybody. I shouldn't use it as a blanket statement, but it's a reality of what we encounter. So it's usually around that 45 to 50-year-old mark that people are like, oh, I really need to do something. And it doesn't mean that it's too late by any means. You're just not going to retire at 53 years old like your parents did or your grandparents did because they had pensions, but we're also living a lot longer too. So the hardest transition that I see people having is, one, equipping themselves to get prepared for retirement from a financial standpoint, but even bigger is the mentality. Am I truly ready to retire? Sure, we wake up every morning, or every Monday morning and say, I don't want to go to work. I don't feel like it. But it's real different when you don't have someplace to go. You lose your identity. You lose your passion that you've had for the last 20 or 30 years. So those are some of the biggest challenges that I see with my clients.
Yeah, having a purpose in life is very important for people to stay healthy, to stay active, to stay engaged. And when you retire, you oftentimes find yourself going, what do I do next? Now, for those individuals, the 44-year-olds, the 45-year-olds, the 50-year-olds that come into your office, what are some of the most important key questions that you ask them to help understand how to advise them? So let's pretend that this is an intake conversation. Square one, let's give people some tangible items that they can start thinking about to then we'll move forward from there to actual steps that they can take.
Yeah. Number one is have a clear idea of what your goals and objectives are. What do you want to do? We kind of mentioned already, it's really easy to retire, especially that first year of retirement in the summertime. Oh, we can be outside, we can golf, we can fish, we can do all that. Then we can get through the holidays. But once that January hits, especially we're in the Midwest, I know you're on the East Coast, it's cold and you got to find things to do. So what are your goals and objectives as far as when do you want to retire? How are you going to spend your time? What are you going to do moving forward? And that helps drive the conversation. Because if you're somebody that is going to retire and wants to spend the bulk of your time volunteering in your community, well, that doesn't take much money to do. You're just donating your time. But if you're somebody that wants to retire and go on 12 cruises a year, that costs a little bit more money. So that'll adjust how much money that we need to have you save in the next 5, 10, 15 years to get you to retirement in order to have that effective retirement that you're looking for.
Do most people come in with an idea of what they want to do in terms of activity and lifestyle, or is it better for you to say, and I don't know the answer to this, is it better for you to say, let's see where your financial situation currently lies, and that can inform what your lifestyle actually prevails? So I can see the benefit in both. Why do you start with goals as opposed to the reality of the current situation? Because most people are going to be like, well, I want to retire in the Riviera with a yacht, but that's just not possible for many people in today's economic climate.
Anybody that I work with will tell you when we're having this goals and objectives conversation, I tell them exactly that. Be as big as you can with your goals. Give me all of your dreams. If it's your dream to buy a Corvette and drive a Corvette, let me know that, because honestly, it's a lot easier for me to rein you in a little bit than for us to work together for the next 20 years. And you're 82 years old and you say, oh, I always wanted to buy that sports car and I never did. Well, why didn't you say something in the very beginning? We could plan around it, because when you list your goals, it's a lot easier. Yeah, retiring in the Riviera on the yacht is really nice, but it might not be realistic. So, hey, why don't we rent a yacht for one summer or something like that to try and give you a little bit of, and kind of work backwards a little bit. So I like to know exactly what your dreams, what your objectives are, and work backwards from that. But let me say this, financial planning is a moving target. It changes all the time. So your goals and objectives when you're 45, 10 years from retirement, are going to be different at 55, at 65, because life happens and things change all the time.
Now, what's the second thing? That we've got the goals and the objectives. What do you do next?
Well, we do an inventory on what you've already done. What have you done already? And, try and have that conversation on order of importance. Speaking, I'm not just saying this because I'm speaking to you, but I always lead with estate planning. It's so important for me to understand, who's important to you, why are they important to you, and then what happens if something happens to you. Okay. And I say it's almost a CYA for both of us, so that if your son or daughter calls my office and starts asking information on accounts and planning and things like that, if I don't have that proper paperwork in place, I can't disclose anything. I need you to agree to say, hey, these are the point people in my life. So I always try to do an inventory, and especially when it comes to estate planning, I'm sure you see this all the time. Everybody says, oh yeah, we did that, because they went and got a will when they were taking their first vacation after their kids were born, and they haven't touched it in 30 years now.
Yeah, that happens all the time with us. And one of the things that we have, especially with our estate preparation package, is that ability to allow people to organize all of their information and give it to their attorney, give it to their certified financial planner, give it to the individuals who actually matter, because the reality is you have to update it. And if they don't know that it exists, then it doesn't exist. So get all your information organized is going to help people like Greg actually serve you better. And, in a strange way, it actually saves you money and makes you money, because that service level that you get from your attorney, from your CFP, is going to be improved. All right. So you've come in, you've got your client's aspirations, you have their assets and you've got access to who can be notified. What's the next step?
Well, now we start to work on the plan. We start to build it out. I would say 80% of the people that I work with come in and be like, I don't even know what I have anymore. I don't know. They usually are slightly embarrassed because, just the way that we are right now, we're not at the same company for 20 or 30 years anymore. So we might have a couple of different 401k plans at different companies. We opened up an IRA at the bank. Then we were working with our accountant and opened up a Roth IRA, that type. So it's a little unorganized. So we try to get things organized for them so we get a clear understanding of where they are and they have a clear understanding. And then they realize, oh, we're not so bad off as we thought we were. All right, this is working. All right. That doesn't mean there still isn't more work to do, but get you organized, start to work on our plan to make sure that we can try and hit as many of those goals and objectives as you can. And planning, like I said, is very fluid.
When you're doing that, how does financial literacy come into play? And there's a lot of nuance. You can go extremely deep into what your clients need to know. And examples of how important it is. I mean, Social Security claiming strategies, like a very nuanced topic.
Right.
Where does your expertise overlap with what your client's expertise and knowledge has? And at what point in time do you go, you don't need to worry about that because we're taking care of it for you?
Exactly. Financial literacy, I do a lot of public speaking on different financial literacy topics. And it's usually, that's when people start to think about things. Like you said, Social Security, they might be turning 60 this year and they're getting close to Social Security and they're like, I don't know what's going on. Is Social Security even around anymore? Because all I hear is bad news about it. I should probably start to go learn more. Or they're 64 years old and they're a year away from Medicare. And they're like, oh, that's so overwhelming. What do I do? So they go to these different workshops to see different presenters talk on these topics just to gather as much information. They do Google searches. They do all these different things to try and piece things together. And then they come and say, okay, this is what I know. Am I close? Am I not close? How can you help me kind of put this together? And like you said, we're doing all that, especially with our current clients. We're doing that all the time behind the scenes. Hey, they're turning 65 this year. Let's start to think about, hey, what's their Medicare claiming strategy going to be? Are they going to go supplement or are they going to go advantage? What are we going to have to do for prescription drugs? Things
Explain
like that.
So let's go through some of these in detail so people get a high level. Let's focus on the Medicare, what you just said. What's the difference between the two strategies?
Well, anybody that's 6 months away from turning 65 just gets inundated with postcards in the mail saying, hey, you should sign up with this plan or this plan. And we know during October to December, we cannot flip the channels on the TV and avoid those commercials for the life of us. Whether it's Joe Namath, Jimmy J.J. Walker, whoever's out there this year talking about Medicare Advantage plans. So we could spend a whole hour talking about different Medicare claiming strategies, but finding the right one for you is really important. And one is going to be more expensive than the other, but with the more expense, you usually get more certainty with it. And that's what a lot of my clients appreciate, that if we go more towards original Medicare as opposed to Medicare Advantage, yeah, we might be paying a higher premium, but we know by paying those higher premiums, we have more certainty in the long run on how much this is going to cost us.
Mm-hmm. And for those of you that aren't familiar, a Medicare claiming strategy involves planning the timing and the manner in which you sign up for Medicare benefits that maximizes your healthcare coverage and can minimize your costs. And some of the factors that go into it are the initial enrollment period, the general enrollment period, special enrollment periods, and then there's a bunch of other things that go into it, Part T, Part C, prescription drug coverage. So it's a big question that a lot of people come to us with, and we can get into that in other podcasts. All right, let's shift topic there. So you mentioned in earlier discussions, whatnot, reducing taxes in retirement. What are some effective strategies that our listeners can leverage to reduce their taxes in retirement, and how does that impact their estate plan?
Well, there's, the biggest thing that people are talking about right now is Roth conversion. Now, a lot of that has to depend on what your goals are for the money. So if your goal is to spend every last dollar that you have, die broke, as the book says, or bounce the check to the funeral home, then maybe Roth conversion isn't the best for you. Okay. It also depends on, hey, what's your life expectancy? What are your kids going to do with the money if they get it? Like, there's a lot more that goes into tax planning than just, oh, I should convert everything I have to Roth because Roth is the greatest thing. Now, believe me, I believe Roth is one of the greatest things out there. I think it's only a matter of time before the government realizes it too and takes it away from us. But so let's take advantage of some of the opportunities that we have. Right now, we are probably in the lowest tax environment that any of us have ever seen in our lifetime. And with our upcoming election this fall, who knows what's going to happen? But guess what? That could happen every 4 years. So I like to say that we can only play in the sandbox that we're in right now. So let's make decisions that are best for us right now and reevaluate all the time as things change on us. So Roth conversion is a big tax planning thing. It depends on if you're charitably driven or are very heavily involved in philanthropy. That's some good tax planning things that we could do, whether it's through qualified charitable distributions. So there's a lot of different opportunities that are available to us to try and put ourselves in a better tax situation. It just takes some proper planning.
Understood. Now let's flip that script. So we talked about die broke, or you just mentioned die broke. What about people that don't want to die broke? They want to have a continued, reliable, established retirement income stream. What are some of those ways that people can generate income during retirement while considering the future?
Well, you had mentioned it earlier about Social Security. I truly believe that for those entitled to receive Social Security, it's probably the biggest financial decision that you'll make in your lifetime. It's not something as simple as filling out the paperwork as soon as you turn 62 and start collecting checks. There are some strategies that are involved that can improve your overall retirement health. So once we have the Social Security situation set up, then it's working around that. How much more guaranteed income do you have? Do you have any type of pension? Anything that we have to worry about? If not, is it important to you to try and create some sort of a pension, whether we use an annuity or just draft a withdrawal strategy, but also being flexible in our withdrawal strategy that we know that if markets perform for us, then we can give ourselves a raise. If markets do not perform for us, then we might have to cut back just slightly on it. I'm not cutting anybody's income in half or anything like that because that's not realistic. But being flexible, being dynamic in our withdrawal strategies so that we can provide a cost of living increase, but know that if we have several bad years in a row, we might have to tighten the belt a little bit. If that's not comfortable for you, then maybe we should lean more towards the guaranteed income side. And that's where we look at some of the guaranteed.
All right. So you've got your estate plan. You've worked with you for years. Everything's copacetic. You can't afford the yacht, but you can definitely rent one or go on a nice trip or two. We've been diligent in setting up and converting the 401s to Roths when needed, whatnot. What happens when somebody passes away? So how do you handle 401ks and retirement accounts after someone passes?
Yeah, that's still very much up in the air this time, Adam, with the Secure Act that came around in 2020, and they keep trying to set these laws that they're not enforcing and admittedly not enforcing. So the way that 401ks and IRAs work now, if somebody passes away, if they are still married and their spouse is still living, they can do an unlimited transfer to their spouse, no problem. If their beneficiary is a non-spouse, so a child, a niece, a nephew, a friend, whoever it is, well, then that beneficiary, the way the law is written, has 10 years to deplete that account. Now, there are some more nuance into it as far as how old the deceased person is, as far as how big the distributions have to be. But like I said, that's the part that the government isn't really enforcing right now. I still inform all of my clients, hey, let's try and follow this to the letter of the law just in case they want to retroact something and we don't get hit in the mouth. But in the simplest terms, we have to deplete those IRAs, those new IRAs for the inherited beneficiaries within 10 years.
We'll create a link in the notes of the podcast to this. We'll actually throw up an article on the website in the next few days. For those that are curious, the Secure Act that Greg just mentioned is the Setting Every Community Up for Retirement Enhancement Act of 2019. It went into effect in 2020 on January 1st, and it introduced several changes aimed at improving retirement savings options for individuals and businesses. That includes changes to minimum required distributions, RMDs, beneficiary distribution rules, expanded access to retirement plans, increased annuity options, changing to 529 education savings plans, birth and adoption withdrawals, small business benefits, and a bunch of other stuff as well. Something you should definitely have on your radar, but it is, again, one of those topics that we can spend an hour or two just talking about, if not weeks. So that's important. So thank you for bringing that up, Greg.
Yeah.
Avoiding taxes in retirement. I know people love to pay their taxes, death and taxes, the two things we can't get away from. What are some of the lesser known strategies that people can leverage?
Yeah, everybody wants to know how to pay less in tax, and honestly, that takes more long-term planning before retirement to put yourself in a better tax situation, for anybody that is, the millennial generation or younger, focus on as much Roth as you can. That'll help alleviate taxes in retirement the best that we can. But for those that are in retirement, again, thinking about your charitable distributions, how you're going to approach that, try and syncing that up with your IRA distributions when needed. But I'm okay paying taxes. I just don't want to pay more than my fair share. That's where I'm at.
Understood. All right. For the overwhelmed, there's a lot of topics we went through today, a lot of helpful hints. For those listeners who might feel that pressure, that feeling of overwhelmness by financial planning, succession planning, what advice do you have for them to get started?
Just get started. Dip your toe. I know it can be very intimidating. You have to be very vulnerable and raw when this happens. So you have to open yourself up to the process. If you're not going to avail yourself to the process, then you're only doing yourself a disservice and you're wasting your time. The planner himself can't care more about it than you care about it. So be vulnerable, be open, talk about it. Be organized in your thoughts. So when they start to ask you questions, be willing to answer them. And if you don't know the answer right now, that's okay too. But they're asking more probing to get you to think more, because this is something that we do all the time. So we know what you should be focusing on. And not everybody has to focus on all the same things. So how are you going to go about this in the best way possible for yourself? So be open to the process. Don't be scared of it. We are trying to help you in the long run, but make sure you find the right person for you too, because there's a lot of different planners. There's a lot of different financial advisors that work with different people and do different things different ways. So find the person that you connect with best.
All right. Now, earlier in the introduction, we mentioned that you started a nonprofit. Can you share a little bit about Gene's Journey for Hope and how it supports families affected by cancer? For us, and the listeners already know this, that are regular, it's a very personal topic for me, for others in my life. My father passed away from cancer that led to the founding of Buried in Work. So it's great work that you're doing, and I'd love to put a spotlight on that if we can.
Yeah, that same story, Adam. My mother was diagnosed with colon cancer and passed away. In an attempt to help bring attention to cancer, my sister decided to run the Chicago Half Marathon while my mother was still alive. We had a big fundraiser to help her raise money. She ended up being the largest fundraiser in the city for that. And my mom passed away later that fall. After that, we decided, well, this was fun. It felt good. Let's do more of this. So we created Gene's Journey for Hope in her name. My mother's name was Gene. And we've just helped local families in the area that have been affected by cancer. We don't have stringent rules on how you use the money or why you use the money or what your qualifications are. We just want to make sure that your story resonates with us and that you're going to use it to best serve your family, whether it's paying medical bills or whether you're closer to the end with cancer and you want to take one last family vacation with your family. I don't care how you do it. We just want to do some social good in the community to help these local families that may not be able to find the resources on their own.
Oh, that's so noble. If people want to find the charity information, and we'll talk about your company in a second of how they can find you, where can they go for more information?
You could go to genesjourneyforhope.org. That's our website. And yeah, feel free to reach out and ask any questions that you have. We're always here to help.
Okay, that's wonderful. Okay, Greg, if people want to find out how to contact you, learn more about your company, where can they find you?
Yeah, so I'm the founder of Pennant Planning, and they can find me at pennantplanning.com. And again, we work exclusively with people at or near retirement. So we do these deep dives into Social Security and Medicare and estate planning. Everybody always wants to talk about investments. Investments are sexy. Money is what drives the train. But there's all these other areas of financial planning that deserve equal, if not more, attention than just the investment. So that's something that we do at Pennant. We focus on all the different areas of comprehensive financial plan and make sure that we drill down and we're looking at each of them to make sure you're in the best situation for yourself.
All right, Greg, thank you so much again for your time. Listeners, thanks for joining us on another Buried in Work podcast. If you enjoyed it, like, subscribe, share it with your friends. We hope you found today's discussion with Greg today insightful and valuable for both your financial planning and your estate planning needs. And remember, planning for your future is crucial. Having the right information can make all the difference. For more information and more resources, come to the website, buriedinwork.com. And don't forget, podcast listeners can save 10% on our games and our estate preparation package with code podcast10 or BIW podcast for a special discount. So use that. If you enjoyed the episode, stay tuned. We'll have more notes and more articles that are related. And until next time, take care and plan well. Greg, thanks again for your time.
Thanks, Adam. Appreciate being here.
Thanks for listening to another episode of the Buried in Work podcast. Remember, you can save 10% on our estate preparation package and games with code podcast10 at buriedinwork.com.